Hello everyone! In this episode of my Dwarf Fortress guide, we're going to discuss Embarking. Embarking consists of two steps, which is picking a site for your fort to be placed at, and then composing your expedition force. First, press Start Playing, and then select a world to play in. Then select Dwarf Fortress mode, and then give the world a few moments to load. The amount of time that this will take is usually dependent on the size of your world, as well as on how developed your world is, with older worlds usually being a little harder to develop, harder to load, and how fast your machine is. Right now, 2 weeks of in-game time will pass as the game loads our world. Don't worry, this is all intended. Now that our world has been fully loaded, you'll be presented with 3 different maps. A local map, which gives an indication of what your site will look like, a region map that will show you what site you're currently selecting, and a world map that will show you where you're looking in the world. For those of you who are interested, this is the world I generated in part 1 of this series. On the far right, you'll see information regarding the site you're currently looking at. There are several tabs for different information, which you can scroll through with the tab key. However, the default tab is the most important. The first thing we can see is what type of biome the site we're looking at is. This determines the type of flora and wildlife your dwarves will be able to encounter. You won't run into the same kinds of animals in the mountains as you would in a swamp, nor will you see the same kind of plants. Some sites will consist of multiple biomes. If that's the case, you can scroll through each biome with F1 to F3. Generally, you can start in any kind of biome you like, but some will provide your dwarves with their own unique challenges, which can make them far harder for a new player. For instance, shorelines will give your dwarves access to an incredibly lucrative fishing industry, but at the same time, they will also have loads of aquifers, which mean your fort will be in constant threat of being flooded if you mine just one erroneous square. However, for the purpose of this guide, we will assume that you're a new player who needs an easy start to get a hang of the basics. So let's look at the ratings of our site. I'll explain what each does and what you'll be looking for. Temperature is an indication of the local climate. Generally, you'll be looking to settle in either a warm or a temperate climate. Avoid climates that are hot, cold, scorching, or freezing. I'll show you some of these, provided I can find them. Here we start getting close to this world's polar caps. You can actually see that these areas are pretty cold, whereas these glaciers are freezing. And if we go all the way down here, the temperature will start going up to warm, to hot in these mountains. And let's see if we can find a good desert. And here we are with scorching temperatures. Climates that are hot, cold, scorching, or freezing can make it especially hard for your dwarves to survive, as they will be hard pressed to find liquid water, and especially on scorching or freezing biomes, your dwarves will be at significant threat of dying from exposure. The trees stat tells you how many trees you can expect on your site. Generally, more trees is a good thing for your fort, as not only will they provide your fort with a source of wood, but can also provide your fort with an extra source of food, as many types of trees produce nuts or fruits that your dwarves will be able to eat, cook into meals, or even turn into alcohol. If you're a new player, it's advisable to start on a site that has at least some trees, though it is possible to start on a site that has no trees whatsoever, as there will always be mushroom trees growing in the underground caverns. The other vegetation stat consists of all non-tree plant life in your biome, both edible and not. In this case, higher is better. Having lots of other vegetation on your map will give your dwarves easy access to other food sources, or even material for certain industries, like the paper industry or the clothing industry. If you're new, starting on a map with lots of other plant life will make your dwarves' life a lot easier. Surroundings is a bit hard to explain. Generally, each area has a rating along two sliders. The first of these sliders is the savagery slider, and the other one is the good versus evil slider. In terms of savagery, a site can be benign, neutral, or savage. These are indications of how dangerous the wildlife in that area will be. Benign areas are very safe starting areas. Neutral areas are normal, for a lack of a better term, and savage biomes are especially dangerous, often featuring a great collection of giant versions of regular animals, which can vary from being an incredibly profitable resource for your dwarves to exploit to being downright dangerous. The most common zones in any world will be calm, wilderness, or untamed wilds. Calm sites are benign, wilderness sites are neutral, and untamed wild sites are savage. However, sites can also be either good or evil. Good biomes are extremely easy to survive in, having access to at least 2 special resources that you won't find anywhere else, and a few creatures that you also won't find anywhere else that can be very valuable to your fort. Evil biomes, however, are extremely dangerous, with loads of dangerous creatures living in them, and even magical, potentially deadly weather. If you're new, you can try starting on a good biome, as doing so will make your game a bunch easier. But evil biomes are to be avoided at all costs. Evil biomes are so dangerous, in fact, that even experienced players often find that the only way to survive in them is to dig out a fort and then seal it off from the outside world forever. However, as of this Dwarf Fortress version, which is 43.05, evil biomes should be avoided even if you know what you're doing, as due to a bug, the heads of small creatures, reanimated as undead, can become impossible to kill, meaning that they can result in entire fort wipes. Serene, mirthful, or joyous wild surroundings are indications of good biomes. Sinister, haunted, or terrifying surroundings mean that these are evil biomes. Joyous wilds and terrifying surroundings are the most difficult versions of these biomes to start off in. Lastly, your site will provide you with a list of resources that can be found on that location. These can be any number of things, but as a new player, you'll be looking for a site that has shallow metals, deep metals, at least some soil, and a flugstone layer. Now, finding a site that meets our criteria can be difficult if we have to check every site individually for an ideal location. Instead, while on the Embark page, press F to enter the search menu. Here you can select several filters, and the game will mark all locations on your map that meet your filters. Since I'm assuming that you're a new player, we're going to be setting our flugstone layer to yes, aquifer to no, river to yes, shallow metals to multiple, deep metals to multiple, and we'll leave the rest as is. And press enter to start searching. Now this may actually take a while depending on how fast your computer is, but we'll leave it running for a few minutes and then come back to it once it's done. Once you've found a suitable site, like I'm showing you right now on the screen, press Tab once to go to the Neighbors tab. Here you can see which races your fort will share the area with. Ideally, you should have a fort that neighbors all 4 races: dwarves, goblins, humans, and elves. Humans and elves are a source of extra trading goods, while goblins keep the game interesting by giving your dwarf someone to fight with. Have to keep the game interesting after all. You wouldn't learn very much if I had you start off on an island somewhere, with no goblins to siege your fort. Pressing tab a few more times puts you in the cliff indicator tab. This gives you an indication of what kind of terrain your site will have. Generally, you want to start off on either a mountainside or a side with a hill, so you'll have somewhere to dig into. But starting on a perfectly flat terrain is also valid. This is more a matter of preference than necessity. When at last you found a site that meets all these requirements, press E to embark. This will give you several options. The first option embarks your dwarves and starts the game. The second option allows you to customize the goods and dwarves you embark with. Once you have a good idea of how the game works, you can try tinkering with this. But otherwise, it's probably for the best if you just press the play now and start off with the default goods for your expedition. By default, it'll give you enough tools and supplies to last your dwarves for about 1 year, and it'll give you a good spread of skills across your dwarves. If you're using the same noob pack that I'm using, you'll also get a bunch of alternative starting setups. At least one of these is made for new players, so feel free to use that one too. I haven't tried it myself, but I'm sure it'll work fine. Once you press play now, your game will commence. If you want to figure stuff out yourself, then good luck from here on out. If not, I'll see you in the next episode of this guide.